Hi, welcome to the channel. In today's video, I'm going to go over my 5 most asked question as a van builder. These questions come up all the time, whether it is on my channel, in an email, on my Tuesday live stream, or the Patreon group. The same questions I get pretty frequently. I'm going to share these with you. We're going to start with number 5 and we're going to work our way down to the number 1 asked questions. So stick around till the end and find out what everybody wants to know. Number 5 is climate control, especially this time of year when the temperatures are hitting 100 degrees out there. There's a lot of people that want to know how I manage the climate in my van builds. A lot of people travel with their pets. I got little Maddie back here, and they want to keep their pets safe and they want to be comfortable in their van. So whether it's the dead of winter or the hot of summer, that is a very frequent asked question. And although everyone has their different answer to this question, I'm going to tell you what I do and what I recommend. So for an air conditioning unit, I feel like it is a tremendous draw on the battery system. I know people that have a $200,000, a $300,000 van. They've got an air conditioning unit in there and they can't run it unless they're on a campground or boondocking, mooch-docking somewhere. It is just a very, very high draw off your battery system. A lot of times it'll only drop the temperature in the cab here, the van living area here, 10 to 15 degrees at the most. So what I recommend, I highly recommend, is the Sirocco fan. I did a build for Les and Bernadette. They've got 3 of them in their van. They can point, come here, Maddie. They can point the fan at themselves. It helps circulate the air, along with a rooftop fan, the Max Air fan, the Fantastic fan, or whatever other brand that you've got. You've got to have some ventilation. A common problem that I see out there with people using vent fans to help cool their van is they've got a vent fan, but they've got nowhere to draw air from. If you've got a vent fan, you've got to have a place that you can open, whether you roll one of your front windows down and you put a vent in it for bugs, or if you've got bunk windows that you can open up. You have to be able to open something up for that fan to draw. So if you're going to put windows in the back, I like putting my vent fan up front. That pulls all that air in through the van and out. It really gives you a nice breeze. If you want your vent fan in the back over the bed, you've got to have a front window or something that opens. You've got to have a way for that fan to pull air. Now, if you've got 2 fans, what I like to do is put one blowing out and the other one just open it. You can have it blow out or pull in as well, but to save on power, if you just open it and you've got the other one blowing out, it is going to circulate that air. You accompany that with a couple Sirocco fans or a Sirocco fan where you're blowing air on yourself or your pet, then you're good to go. There are little swamp coolers. There are the Delta Pro, the Delta Wave. I have put a couple of those in. I do like that option. Sean has just an upright unit that vents out the window. We made a plexiglass template for that. That works well as well. They are also power draws. They draw a lot of power. There are companies now that are making window like a flange so that you can put those wave, that EcoFlow wave through the window and ventilate it. You don't have to come up with some fancy hole in the van. So those are options as well. So then when it comes to heat, heat is different. There's a lot of people that like the Webasto heater. They can hook it up to their gas tank. It is super easy for me to install a Webasto heater, hook it up to the ProMaster. I haven't done a Transit yet, but the ProMaster ventilation, it is just easy. I've done a Velvet heater, same concept, same connection, super easy, about half the price. That's Velvet. Diesel heaters, they're inexpensive. You have to use them right. They're only about $100 now. Easy to install as well. You do have to have the fuel inside the van, but inexpensive. If something happens to it, it's easy to exchange it out. The fuel, if you put the tank by a door, you can easily pull up to a diesel pump and fill it up. You do have the fuel that's non-combustible inside the van, but not a deal breaker. The other things are propane heaters, like the Wave heater, and you see a lot of people use those, and very economically friendly. You do have to carry the propane with you. Don't forget to get a CO2 detector. The other thing is a little Mr. Buddy heater. Those are wet. It is a wet heat. It's going to increase the moisture in your van. So, you know, I'll use one of those, heat it up in here, and then I go to bed. An electric blanket, a 12-volt electric blanket is a very good option. Try not to get an AC one that plugs into an outlet. Use your DC as much as possible. So that's air control, that is heat control inside your van, lots of blankets. The other thing, in the dead of summer, hit high elevation. Don't camp in areas where it's 115 degrees. Don't go to the Arizona desert in the summer, and don't go to Michigan in the winter. You go to, you know, a lot of people call it chasing 70 degrees. Chase 70 degrees. That's your safest answer. All right, the next one on the list is, how much power do I need? This really depends on what you want out of your van life. I would think about all the components that you would like to have in your van, whether it's a max air fan, whether it's a doggy air conditioner, whether it's computer and videoing and gaming. Think about your power needs. Do you have a gas stove, or do you have an electric stove? Do you have a microwave? Do you have an AC unit? Make a spreadsheet. Add all these items up that you would like to have in your van build. On the bottom of every appliance, it shows you how many watts that appliance is going to use in an hour. It's a watt hour. Add those items up. I would add about 25 to 30% onto that, and that's how many watt hours you need to have in a van build, in your van build. The other thing is I always like to carry a backup power source. Whether you've got the full electrical system, or whether you have a Blue Eddy or an EcoFlow or an Anchor or a Jackery, always have a backup. And not that your system's gonna go wrong, but it's nice to have a battery to take outside, go down to the beach, charge your phones, play a projector outside, help somebody else out charging their power needs. So always good to have a backup. Plan B is never, ever, ever. Always have a plan B. Next on the list, should I buy a van or build a van? And that's a pretty simple answer, and it really depends on you. Do you have time to wait for a build? I'm scheduling right now for 2025 in May, June area. So do you have time to wait on a builder to squeeze you in? Is there a van out there that you found that is built out, it's in your budget, and it's ready to start traveling in and exploring immediately? That may be what you want. If you can purchase a van, or you ordered a van and you're waiting on it, and you're waiting on your builder anyway, and you want a very specific design, then by all means hire a builder, hire me. So it really, people ask me this, and I commonly tell them the exact same thing. Do you have time to wait for your builder? Do you have the money for a custom build? Because typically it will be a little bit more expensive for a custom build than buying one that someone's trying to get rid of out on the road. A lot of times it depends what state you're in. Don't hesitate to find a van in another state, because if you're buying in California, Arizona, Florida, Oregon, Washington, you're likely going to pay more money for a used van that's already built out than you would, say, in Missouri, Indiana, a state where van life isn't as booming as Arizona, California, that kind of thing. So that is really basically, in a nutshell, it's really your time frame, what you can wait on, availability, and your budget. The next question on the list is, which van do I think is better for van life? And I honestly am going to say that every van out there has their pros and cons. I typically would stay away from a Sprinter unless you know how to work on a diesel motor, you frequent big cities, and can have a diesel worked on. I'm not saying that they have problems, but I'm saying if they do, and you have to get it to a diesel mechanic, you have to be prepared to hunt. They are not readily available in every town. And when they are, there's typically a wait for them to get you in because they're not on every corner. So with that being said, the Sprinter is expensive. It's a more expensive van. It's got more luxuries. It comes in 4x4. A lot of the outdoor rugged vans, Overlander, Storyteller, they are making incredible builds on these Sprinter chassis. But it comes with a ticket, just like everything, when an issue arises, which it will in the lifetime of you owning your van, and you got to find a mechanic to get to work on it. With that being said, if you are not worried about that issue, if you know how to work on vans, then by all means, if you can afford it, Sprinter is a nice luxury van. Ford and Ram both have their issues, in my opinion, as far as the Eurovan group. Ford and Ram both have issues. I think if you're a Ram lover, you're gonna find 17 faults with a Ford. If you love Ford, you're gonna find 17 faults with a Ram. I can say I have worked on both probably equally. There's things that I love about both of them. You guys know that having a swivel seat in your van, it really opens up. It gives you a lot of more living space. Hands down, Ford Transit you swivel that seat around and you're lounging. You swivel the Ram ProMaster seat around and your feet are dangling. That's a big issue for me because I do have a lot of guests in my van when I travel, and we always have a footstool in the floor of the van because the seats, both swivel seats, are very high. So definitely not a deal breaker, but definitely something to think about. As far as building the vans out, if you're going to do a DIY build, Ram and Transit both, I have really gotten the framing down to a pretty good how I like to do it. I love utilizing the bump ends for not wasting space, making cabinets in the walls, but still having that nice straight framing so that it makes it a whole lot easier. As far as connecting things to the walls, a lot of times I use stainless steel hardware. Riv nuts I do use. It's not my favorite. I feel like a lot of times they either strip when you're trying to put them in. They tend to spin in there. I've done a van build where every single one of them went in with no problem. The steel on the Ford Transit up front is a lot harder of a metal, so it's harder to drill through. The area right behind the driver's seat, right behind the passenger seat. But again, very doable, and I have really found to love marine adhesive. I feel like it's a very strong bond, and it makes for attaching things between that riv nuts and the stainless steel hardware a whole lot easier. So as far as framing and building, it's about the same. I do think I can get a little bit wider of a bed in a ProMaster as opposed to a Transit. The higher you go, the narrower your bed's going to be. So it really depends on how high you go with your build. An east to west bed is always going to be shorter than a north to south. It does make a difference. Plenty of room for a queen short or a queen mattress if you go north to south. However, obviously it does cut into your living space. But if you're married to somebody that's 6'4" or you're 6'4" yourself, that may be how you have to go. So, as far as putting windows in, fans in, drilling into the vans, they're all about the same. The metal is surprisingly pretty thin on these vans. The rooftops, again, pretty thin, easy to drill. On the roof for the Transit and the Ram, I do like the Ram better. I feel like it's a little bit thicker of a steel, depending on the year that you buy. But the Ram has the T-posts, and Transit has the little caps that you take off, and then there's a threaded receiver inside there. I have heard of multiple stories where people have those leak. You don't have that on the Ram because the Ram doesn't have. They've got the T-post, you just connect to them. I've never had a Ram leak. Also, the Transit, the weather stripping on the back door is a notorious problem. I have gotten one van in this shop that had a weather stripping in the back that wasn't ruined. Every single van I have done from a Transit, that back weather stripping is shot. So if you got a new van, be careful with that, baby it. As soon as you start seeing some of that weather stripping start to work itself away, get some adhesive and get that back on there. If you are pulling that rubber gasket off to put a bug screen or something back on, prepare to have issues, because it has issues staying on already. Now you just took it off to put a bug screen up. You're putting it back on. It's going to be a chronic problem where you are re-crimping that weather stripping and sliding it back on. Don't get the bug screen too tight. That will create even a worsening problem. But a known issue with the Ford Transit. Along with the Ford Transit on the top, that brake light, those two black caps on the ends of the brake light, notorious for losing those and coming off. You see one of those starting to look like it's coming off, get some Eternabond tape, get that tape down, because ultimately on these back roads, these bumpy roads, you're in a moving earthquake, you're going to lose that cap. So again, those are just tips on the Ram and the Transit. Both of them make a pretty good build. I do like underneath the van, if you want an undermount generator, a gray tank in the middle of your van, you got a shower on one side, a sink on the other, you want to use the same gray tank, ProMaster is much better. The Transit has that drivetrain or that axle all the way down the center of the van. You have to they're like $299 gray tanks for underneath the van. That's your choice. So that I've found, unless you get a small 5-gallon one that you're going to squeeze in right behind the driver's seat, right behind the passenger seat, there's a small area. So that's about it on those. I've been doing Transits and Rams for so long now that I've got a lot of good to say about each. I did do a video with Bernadette a couple years ago on some of our favorite likes and dislikes. I'll link that above so you guys can check that out. Last on the list, everybody, the number one question I get multiple times is, how much does a van build cost? And I can tell you, I have done van builds that my labor was like $6,000. I've done some that were hardly nothing, just fixing up stuff. And I've done van builds, the labor was $24,000. It really depends on what all you want in your van. I've done 2 GMC Savannahs, and both of them pretty low cost builds because you have a small living area. I did a transit short. She bought a bunch of cabinets, that like one from Home Depot, one from a yard sale. I refinished them, put them in her van. You know, it's a very inexpensive build when you go that way. I've done a van where she wanted wall to wall to wall to wall to wall cabinets and everything painted. That's a more expensive build. You're looking in excess of $20,000. You're also looking at an overall appraisal of, you know, $120,000. So you are getting what, you know, what you want. You can buy a $5 bucket toilet, and you can buy a $1,100 composting toilet. I just got contacted by a company, Princess Toilet. They're $4,000 or $5,000. So that makes a big difference. If you're going to go with a big electrical system and it's $10,000 for all these, you know, 600 amp hours of lithium batteries, or you're going to go with a $1,200 Blue Eddy Max, you know, you're going to save in excess of, you know, $5,000 on your electrical system. So it really depends on what all the client wants. Because of this, there's a lot of times that I can kind of talk to the client about a build and say, well, everything that you want, I think it's going to take me about 250 hours. Or no, we're in excess of 300 hours. You want everything painted, you want wall-to-wall cabinets. It's going to be in excess of 300 hours. On average, you know, it's between 200 and 300 hours for a build. We did Sean's build in 28 days. So it depends on how long I've got the van. How many things does a client change halfway through the build? I had a client that wanted their bed higher. We were already building, so it makes a difference. So as far as how much does one of my builds cost, I mean, I think most people spend $10,000 to $15,000 on components in their van. Refrigerators, toilets, battery systems, lights, wires, all the wood. I would say 10 to 15 on average. I'm not saying you can't do it for $5, because I'm 100% certain that you can. Solar panels are a couple hundred a piece, you know. They're about $100 per 100 watts. So what I do is I send a client a worksheet, and I have them check windows. How many windows do you want? 3? Okay, it's going to be this price. How many vent fans do you want? 2? Okay, it's going to be this price. And by all the things that they check on that spreadsheet, I can give them a pretty close estimate of how long their build's going to take and how much it's going to take. Now, barring any changes in the middle of the build. So the other thing is I've had people come to the shop and they rent a bay to save a ton of money and just have me on hand to answer questions. And I enjoy that as well. There is a daily fee for that because my insurance is not cheap. Anytime you own a business like this, the insurance is costly. The campground, you know, you have to live in your van while you're having it built out. That's going to take extra time. So you have to schedule, you have to figure that in with your build. So when people ask me about how much is my van going to cost, we really have to sit down and narrow it down. What all do you want in your build? But I'm saying that you can get away with a fairly inexpensive build, and you can have a luxury build that, you know, you're not going to spend more than $100,000 on the van, the components, and the labor, but it's going to appraise over that. And there's a ton of vans out there on the market now in excess of $100,000, $200,000, even $300,000 now. So custom builds, to me, they're special. They may take a little bit longer. It takes a little bit longer to get on the list, the waiting list. I take a deposit. It's first come, first serve. But I do feel like the bond between the client and the builder is important. I feel like I can incorporate some special components for the client because I learn and get to know them throughout the build. And once my van build is done and you come to get it, you stay at the campground, you live in it for a couple of days. I've had people stay 24 hours. I've had people stay 10 days. You live in it, learn it, get the tweaks out. Every build's going to have some tweaks. And that you're not going to get that if you go and just buy a van. If you buy a used van, you only are going to get that with a custom builder like Midwest Van Builders, where I have the campground available. I've got the space available, the electricity, the water. So, and that all factors into the price, but definitely, in my opinion, definitely worth it to hire Midwest Van Builders. And just, we will help you get it within your budget and help you to leave here with your dream home. So anyway, these are my most asked questions. If you've got a question that I didn't answer on this video and you would really love to find out, you can either leave a comment below. If it's a long question and there's going to be some correspondence back and forth, send me an email to midwestvanbuilders@gmail.com. That's all lowercase letters, no space, midwestvanbuilders@gmail.com. And I answer every email. Sometimes it'll take me a couple of days, but I assure you I will answer that email. And we look forward to building your dream van here at Midwest Van Builders, or consulting with you to help you build your dream van. Guys, take care. Thanks for following along. We'll see you guys on the next video.